As you can see, I've got a lot of PC parts, and that's because I'm going to be doing an AMD build featuring Thunderbolt, so stick around. Hello everyone, my name's Mike, and here at Sabrent we talk about tech and tech related stuff, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you get updated. As I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be doing a PC build, and this isn't going to be a guide or anything like that, but we've got a brilliant motherboard that allows us to have an AMD CPU with Thunderbolt connectivity, and we're going to obviously be putting our famous Sabrent SSDs into this thing, as well as showing you some of the accessories that you can pair with those Thunderbolt ports from Sabrent. Anyway, enough of me talking, let me get into the build and talk you through some of the parts that I'll be using, as well as some of the Sabrent Thunderbolt accessories that you can pair up with this PC build to expand its capabilities. So the motherboard that we're basing our PC build around is the Asus ProArt B550 Creator motherboard, and this is a fantastic motherboard. So let me open this up and I'll talk through some of the features and why I've chosen it for today's PC build. So as you can see, this has got a lot of I/O, and the main bits that I'm interested on this board is firstly the fact that it has two Thunderbolt 4 ports, as well as a whole bunch of USB 3.2 ports, as well as two 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports. So a lot of connectivity for pretty much anything you need. So the CPU I'm going to pair with this is the AMD Ryzen 9, and this is the 5900X. So lots of cores, lots of power, really nice for this type of build. Next up, we've got 32 gigabytes of RAM, so we're going to install this. This is 8 gigabyte sticks each, and this is clocked at 3600 at CL18, so more than good enough for this kind of build. Next up, we're going to install a couple of SSDs. So I'm going to install the Sabrent Rocket PCIe 3.0 SSD in the PCIe 3.0 slot. And then I'm going to install our fastest Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus, which has speeds up to 7,000 megabytes per second. And we're going to install that in the PCIe 4.0 slot. So we're going to unscrew the heatsink. And there's the second one. So those are the SSD covers off. Now, we always need to make sure that the SSD standoffs are in the correct positions, because otherwise we're going to puncture the SSD, and I've seen that a lot happen. So on the motherboard itself, it actually has some markings to let us know what size SSDs are corresponding to which standoff. And luckily, the pre-installed standoffs are correct for the size of SSD that we're using. So it's 2280. And that's the size SSD that we're using. Now what I'm going to do is, rather than using the PCIe 4.0 heatsink, which isn't that substantial to be honest, I'm going to install the Rocket Nvme heatsink from Sabrent, just because we know that this is market leading when it comes to heatsink performance and SSD cooling. So to install the heatsink onto the SSD, all that you need to make sure is that, see this indentation where the sort of two lines go? You want to make sure that that is in line with the hole just over here. And then what you need to do is, there's a plastic cover to protect the heat pad, the thermal pad. So you want to remove that, and then you want to place that on the SSD itself, like so, and position that in the center. As you can see, you have the bottom plate, and what you want to do is you want to again peel off the protective film, and you want to place that in like so. So it's nice and flush with the screw hole, as you can see. And then you have two screw holes on either side. You just want to screw that in firmly, and that is a very nice SSD ready to be installed. And then what you want to do is you want to slot this in at a 90-degree angle, and then on the back, can you see this little thing over here? You want to slide that across. Now this is a special feature on Asus boards, and you just slide that, and then as you can see, that is honestly not going anywhere. I'm now going to do the same thing with our Sabrent Rocket PCIe 3.0 SSD, and I'm going to use a white Sabrent Rocket Nvme heatsink, just so that you guys can see what the differences are like between the two in terms of color. One thing to mention is that if your SSD is single-sided, so unlike our Sabrent Rocket 2 terabyte model, this is actually dual-sided. Okay, So this is a dual-sided SSD, but if you are installing anything sort of smaller than this, typically they will be a single-sided. You want to install this inside the heatsink, so then it adds that little bit of thickness that you are going to need for a single-sided SSD. So again, make sure to peel the protective layer off of the heatsink, and then again align this section just over here. Oh, there you go. Align this section just over here with the bottom of the SSD. And then remove the protective film off of the base plate, and then again insert that in like so. And then just remember to screw in all the screws that are included so that the heatsink is nice and tight on the SSD. And then we just want to repeat the steps. So again, just insert it in a 45-degree angle, let that settle down, and then you want to slide this across like so, so that it's again firmly in place with no issues. And there we have it. We have both SSDs installed. So we've got the Rocket 4 Plus installed with the Sabrent heatsink, and then we've got the Rocket SSD installed with again the Sabrent heatsink. So we're going to have ultimate cooling for these two SSDs. So that's pretty much it in terms of what I want to get fitted onto the motherboard. Now some people, if they have an air cooler, they will want to fit that also onto the motherboard before fitting it into the case. But today I'm fitting a water cooler, or a AIO, which is an all-in-one cooler. So I'm going to be doing that once this motherboard is in the PC case. So let me grab it and let's chuck this thing in. So first of all, we want to remove the captive thumb screws so that we can get into this PC case. And this literally just comes out like so. I'm also going to remove the dust filter as well, so that we've got a little bit more access to the top bit, as that's where we're going to be fitting our AIO. So I've laid it on its side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the motherboard into the PC case, and we'll try and do this as carefully as we can. That should all slot nicely, which it does. And then we're just going to install the screws into the motherboard, and just making sure that they're nicely tight but not obviously over tightened. So what I'm doing now is removing some of the PCIe shields so that we've got room for the GPU, but we won't insert that just yet because we want to now actually do a slight bit of cable management and plug in all the relevant front panel connectors and RGB fans. We want to get that connected to the motherboard. Now I've removed the back panel so that we've got easier access to feed the cables through the holes that we need to. And again, just look at the motherboard instructions to make sure that you are connecting the correct cables to the right connectors on the motherboard. Okay, so we've now installed all the headers for the front panel as well as the fans onto the motherboard. Now the next step would be to install the power supply. The power supply I'm using today is an 850 watt power supply, so this is plenty, and it's a modular power supply, meaning that we only need to connect the cables that we're actually using it, keeping the build nice and easy to cable manage as well as easy to install. One thing I will do is remove the hard drive cage, because it doesn't look to be like there's going to be a lot of room behind the PSU. So to make my life a little bit easier, and I'm not installing any 2.5 inch SSDs or anything like that, so we may as well remove that and just give us a little bit more room to do some of the cabling. Okay, so that's everything we're going to need, and again we just need to make sure that this is facing downwards because we're going to be pulling in fresh air from the bottom. Now I'm going to install the power cables. So I'm going to install the motherboard cable and then the PSU cable. So as you can see, I've installed the motherboard cable and the CPU cable. And next up, I think we're going to install the AIO. Okay, so we've now installed the all-in-one cooler. It's a little bit janky, but it will do for now. So now I'm just going to do a little bit of cable management and just make sure all the correct connectors are connected. And then the last thing we'll do is connect up the GPU. Okay, so I think I've cable managed everything quite nicely over here. So it's the best I'm going to get. To be honest, I haven't built in this case before, so everything's a little bit new to me, but I think the cable management isn't too bad. Everything looks quite neat and tidy. I think I could probably reroute this cable a little bit better. I'll probably do that in a second. But yeah, apart from that, there's definitely a lot of space, but yeah, very nice compact little build. But it's now time to add this GPU. Woo. So we got the 3080. Awesome. There you go, clicked in. That's clicked in. And then we're going to need this adapter just over here to connect to the GPU. And I wonder how I'm going to be able to cable manage that nicely. So let's just see. So how does that look? I don't think that's too bad. It's going to be blocking some of that airflow though, isn't it? But I don't want it to be on top because I don't want it to get in front of that fan. Yeah, that's a shame. All right, well, we'll leave it as that and double check everything. Always double check everything before we turn it on. I should probably screw this in before I turn anything on. So I've popped the back panel back on and there's not a lot of room behind that thing, but yeah, let's power this on and just double check, make sure all the lights are on and just make sure obviously I've plugged everything in correctly. Okay, let's turn this on and push the button. So I've managed to get Windows all installed onto the new PC, but it's not a new PC until we peel the film. So we've just powered it up, and as you can see, I've just left the RGB on the memory sticks just to give it a splash of colour in this sea of white. I've also added another fan just at the back here just to help pull some of that hot air away from the GPU, but so far looks fantastic. So what I've done here is that because I want to use this as my testing PC to test out new SSDs, and because this is a B550 board, the top slot is only PCIe 4.0 and the bottom slot is PCIe 3.0. So what I've done is I've loaded my OS and anything else that I need onto the bottom drive, and then the top drive I'm able to switch out and test out new SSDs that we've got coming in the pipeline. And obviously this kind of rig is going to be plenty to push the system and the SSDs as much as we like. So something I'm going to need to pair with this PC is an external SSD. The reason for that is so that I can transfer data from one PC to another, and the XTRM-Q SSD from Sabrent is something that is going to pair so nicely because of its Thunderbolt connection to the Thunderbolt port on the back of this PC. I'm able to utilize up to 2,700 megabytes per second transfer speeds. Now these drives are available up to 8 terabytes, or we've also got a dual Nvme SSD which goes all the way up to 16 terabytes. As you can see, these are really small, Thunderbolt compatible, and is part of Intel's Evo lineup as well. So yeah, definitely certified, definitely works fantastically fast, and is obviously durable. And because this PC doesn't have a 10 gig Ethernet port, well, luckily we have got the Sabrent Thunderbolt 2 10 gig Ethernet adapter. So utilizing the Thunderbolt port here, we can use a 10 gig network thanks to this adapter. So this is going to be really useful for connecting up to my NAS, which has a 10 gig Ethernet port. And as you can see, this is again built very, very well and has all the heat dissipation for those high transfer speeds. So with this PC paired with some Sabrent SSDs, Sabrent heat sinks, and a couple of Sabrent Thunderbolt accessories, I mean, this thing is going to be a fantastic workhorse for years to come. If you want to check out any of the Sabrent products that I've mentioned in today's video, then I'll leave some links down in the description for you guys to go and grab. But anyway, that's it for today's video. If you've enjoyed it, then please make sure to hit that like button and also make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you guys get updated. Anyway, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.